So we are going to start with going into an executive session to discuss the issues with the electric crew. I believe that's under VSA 313A1. Can somebody make a motion for executive session?
We're gonna have two motions,
Two motions.
the premature disclosure. In the executive session.
All right, so move to find that a premature general public knowledge, that one?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you want to make that, BJ? This first one?
I'd like to add something to the agenda before we.
Okay.
An update on the ULP charge and the expenses related to it.
Yeah, we're gonna get that. That's already on the agenda.
That's under executive session. I'd like to under public, please.
Well, I don't think we can do it under public.
You read the ULP charge in the open meeting, Mr. Chair, so that makes it a public matter.
All right, yeah. We can just read it over again. But we're gonna get updated on it by our attorney. I can't really update it. All right, BJ?
Move to find the premature general public knowledge of a potential contract to clearly place the public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Motion 2, to enter an executive session to consider the contract confidentiality, attorney-client communications, and to invite town attorney Brian Monis.
That's not what we're doing this time.
So it's just that one?
That's that first one, and then,
What's the second one? It's 1 and 2 on this.
yeah,
one.
but that's the only one that relates to our meeting with Ken.
Okay, so that's, so I already read it.
So
Okay.
is there a second to that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the second motion is this one here, VSA 313.
Okay. 1 VSA 313A1, when and only when the public body has made a specific finding that premature general public knowledge, see below, would clearly place the state, municipality, or public body or a person involved at a substantial disadvantage, it may go into executive session to discuss one of the following. Do we read out all of them or?
And
That's
the one is it's labor relations.
Labor relations agreements with employees?
Is there a second to that motion? All in favor?
Aye.
So we're going into executive session. Call the regular meeting for July to order. It's 6:18. Present are the 5 trustees, Rosemary and Donna and Alex, Ken. I don't know the rest of you folks, so if you can just, Donna will get your names, please.
Larry Horner.
Chairman, function, but I totally don't say
Okay.
these guys will be my intelligence and theory.
Ron.
Rosemary, is this working? This mic?
Okay.
You were Larry Foreman,
Yep.
and one of you is Jeremy, who's on the agenda. Sandra Nixon.
You guys okay, that's one.
Okay, and
Ron Dixon.
Ron. Okay.
What was? All right, first item on the agenda is to elect a vice chair for the trustee board.
A motion BJ for vice chair.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any discussion? Then we can vote all in favor of BJ for vice chair.
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. Congratulations, BJ. Review and approve minutes of the trustee meetings. The trustee meeting of June 13th, 2022.
So motion.
For a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, it's unanimous. The treasurer's report. Can we postpone this one?
Yes.
Till after some of these members of the public. So the first one, he's not here, but I'll speak for him, is Howard Romero for the skate park. He has a request for the village bucket truck to dig 12 holes, 30 inches deep, put up a fence post for to isolate the parking area from the lawn. And I would go down and help them. I don't know what the estimate is. Nate says it's possible they're gonna run into some debris because there was trailers and other things buried there. But 30 inches deep, hopefully we can deal with that. So is there any,
I mean, that's gonna take nearly a day of the crew's
think?
time.
you think, a day?
You got
To
30
dig
holes.
12 holes?
Last time we run an auger, one of them machines, they run into anything on there, it's gonna take a long
How many?
time.
How many?
I'm all for it, I just wanna be aware that it's gonna tie up our crew for a day.
What did Nate say when you asked him?
That was when Howard said it was gonna be 30 something holes, and he said it would take a day. Howard said 1 hour.
Yeah.
I was hoping that it could be done in half a day or less.
And Nate was okay with that?
He would do whatever we ask him to. I think it would take 2 guys. Or we can just ask them to try to dig them by hand.
Just.
Well,
Is it still a 3-man crew?
as of Thursday, it'll be back to 4.
Well, I would say it definitely should not happen to have a full crew. And I would say, you know, if it's gonna be more than a half a day's time, maybe the town ought to help pay for this. So
There's what?
I said, if it's gonna be more than a half a day's time, maybe the town ought to help pay for part of it.
Okay,
That's a lot of labor.
all right.
Say we'll do the thing for half a day. Say, you know, what you can do in half a day. That work, Jen?
You said 12 holes, not 30 now, right?
12 holes, 30 inches deep.
I can't imagine.
Take that one, 12.
If they run the issues, they'll move the whole.
Yeah, you're talking, it'd be $700-800 cost to the village, so. As long as it doesn't get too expensive, I mean, I'm all for the skate park and everything, I'm just saying, let's be realistic.
Well, it's just.
It's not in the village, so.
Do they have to finish it half a day or do it by hand? Finish it by hand. Okay. All right, I need a motion.
We let our, let the.
Second,
No second.
all in favor?
Discussion.
Aye.
Like to see it added to, you know, friendly amendment to that. Oh, that, if it's more than half a day, the town pays it out. We're not just gonna pull out of there with 6 holes up.
Second to Ken's friendly amendment. All in favor?
Bye.
So it passes with the amendment that, it's more than a half a day that, the town will have to pay the balance, and I'll have Howard talk to them, or we,
I'm gonna say, cause they'll have to prove the,
They'll
agree
have
to
to
that.
request it.
yeah, so he'll have to put it on their meeting.
They can-
Or the option is
They
he
can
can try to dig
start
it
it.
by hand,
Yeah.
or,
They can see what they get done in half a day.
okay.
And then go from there.
I just like to remind the board, we're paying union workers and using $1 million pieces of equipment, so we gotta really consider that. It's not about just digging holes in the skate park, it's about being able to repair, or put holes in for the power by your house.
Yeah, well,
Just a point of order, this is a motion stands, you should technically have to vote on the amendment and then vote on the motion.
okay, thank you.
So you can't just pass the motion.
All right. So for the amendment, the friendly amendment that, if it goes over half a day, the, town will,
They'll have to request.
they'll have to get a request to pay the balance over, I guess, 4 hours
Prior to starting.
prior to starting.
No second.
So now we'll go back to the original motion, which is for the truck to drill 12 holes, 30 inches deep, for the skate park. Not taking more than half a day, right?
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
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 All right, it passes. The next item on the agenda, I believe, is you, Alex.
I've got some money invested into that right away problem, and I feel the village should take away fees, because they found some stuff that I couldn't get to my lot. So, but good thing I had it looked at. And I'm kind of a reasonable guy, and I just feel why should it come out of my pocket? I bought the land with a right of way on it. And to this day, I still don't have it. I bought it last November, December. And right now, I talked with Tim Sargent, said it's $830 as we speak. And I'm glad he picked up on it, because it's gonna be done right, and everybody's gonna forget it.
Okay,
So what happened? I don't know what happened.
The way it was, I wanted the same right of way that was on the east side, on the west side. And the way it was coming out, it was 15 feet shallow.
So the village property was short of your
Yeah.
destination.
Yeah, I still couldn't get to my land.
So it was what you thought you were trading lengthwise. It
Yeah.
wasn't long enough to get to where you're supposed to go.
Yeah, yeah.
So you got it all remedied with the $800.
That's what he's got into it right now. He's waiting for you guys gotta put it in, who's the citizen and publicize it for a month or 2 months or
It was
whatever.
in the paper last week, so we're on the countdown now.
Yeah.
so you're asking us to reimburse you for that?
Either that, or I can have Tim send the village the bill.
What was the amount now?
It was last Friday, it was 832. My knowledge, I wrote it down on a piece of
Okay.
scrap paper.
Well, if you could drop that invoice or bill off to Rosemary, we'll vote on it right now to pay it.
So is that the final?
No, he's gonna review it after it's signed, I believe, which is fair to all parties involved.
He's gonna review what, the
The document after it's signed.
deed or whatever?
Yeah, the legal stuff.
So there's gonna be another bill, you're saying?
Well, it'd be minimal.
Okay.
And the bill you want us to take care of is what it costs to
So far.
add on whatever the extension piece that.
You know, I'm glad that he did what he did. He did some digging, and I still want to say we'll get him a lot.
So Alex, would you be happy if we allowed you to spend up to 1,000 on that? Or would you rather wait until you have your final billing and then?
Either that, I could have Tim submit it to you guys. I don't think it's gonna be much more than that. I wouldn't think.
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion to pay you for it. I just want to know, do you want to wait until you are done with your lawyer, the fees that were involved in that? Or do you want to just go with your 836?
Yeah, I just soon wait.
Well,
I would personally, I mean, this is a debt that he's incurring because of the village's screw up, so I think I would make a motion to cover his legal expenses, period. Could you recommend?
Yeah, it's cheaper than us taking the retaining wall down.
Okay,
Oh,
well.
I could do that.
And I have a motion up there.
Yeah.
so if you're okay with waiting until you are done with
And I
getting,
can just submit it to Rosemary once I get my final after the sign seal and delivered. And,
so I'd make a motion that we allow, let's say, up to 1,000, and if it's more than that, we can discuss this matter again.
Is there a second to Ken's motion?
I probably ought to say that we're to pay for his legal fees for the village's error of blocking his right of way.
Second.
All in favor, or any more discussion? All in favor of Ken's motion?
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes aye as well.
I think we best take care of Alex.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Actually, while we're here, I'd like to ask you one quick question about the pump house up by Katie Lynn.
Yeah.
So if we were to go through with our well, like we discussed, we would want to pull our pipes out of that. Is that what Dan was saying?
I believe so.
Out of that building and get them in the ground. Or if it stays, because it's a heated building, so if we give up that building, we don't want to heat it.
You don't want to heat it.
Do you want to heat it?
Alex has got the maps to show you.
But that's, because we were concerned if we didn't get it in the ground, there's a hydrant beyond that. So we wanted to keep that hydrant connected.
Well, that's for attention, hydrant up.
So then we would need to get it down in the ground because we wouldn't want to continue to pay to heat the building. It's just something Dan wanted me to talk about, and I wanted more information before I called.
Dan's on Zoom, so.
Are you, Dan? You there? Did I say that correctly for you?
Yeah, because the village line enters that building and passes through to the hydrant. So if the plan would be to not heat that building after we get back to them, then we either need to get our pipes out there or we would bear the cost of heating that building.
They comes out of the building, goes to the hydrant. I think that's hydrant.
Yeah, and then it comes up in and then drops, or it comes in, comes up, drops, and goes back down, so that.
There's a 4-inch T there. I was saying just cut a valve in right there. That would disband your well. And this would still be hot. Otherwise, to keep that hydrant hot, you're gonna have to come over here. Right?
That would be more
Main line?
Dan's talking, but I believe we just wanted to get it in the ground so we didn't have to heat the building, correct?
Correct. We can valve off and just take a valve out that separates that well from the municipal line in that building. We can either do that. If we do that, we need to heat the building. It has to be heated because there's a 6-inch line that goes through there.
Yeah.
It connects down to a 4 and then goes back up to a 6. So we need to make our pipes bypass the building totally to that hydrant.
Which would be simply pump before it goes into the building.
Yeah, right here.
And then get it back, get it down in the ground.
Come out here into the 8-inch.
And then we can keep that hydrant live, right, Dan?
Correct.
Yeah.
That was our goal. We just needed to.
And Chick Percy will do anything to help the village out with the transfer. He's a new owner and they're willing to help in any way possible. And they've got the knowledge. I don't know, I just gotta make it legal.
Yeah.
Whatever your engineers wanna do, let them know and they'd be happy to work with you.
We'll have more on that once we get to that stage, but it was just a question Dan wanted me to ask you, and I was gonna actually get back home, but I got it.
Yeah, well, I thought it'd be a quick fix, but yeah, you don't wanna heat it, which I don't blame, but maybe. I'll see.
We're kind of giving up our right of way over to that.
Yeah, maybe I'll see if Chip wants to heat it.
Right, if they're gonna use that water from the well for anything, they're gonna have to heat that building anyway.
Right. Right.
But that's taking the responsibility for the village to trust that they're gonna heat it to them.
Right.
As he said, if that pipe blows and nobody's paying attention,
Yeah.
that's half our water gone in a
Yeah.
quarter of a day.
Well, probably gonna have to come in here, tap in the 8-inch. And the
Get rid of it in the
building would be
building.
all disbanded.
Yeah, that's pretty much what you were shooting for, right, Dan?
Yeah, ultimately, yes.
All right.
So if you could talk to them and see if they're all for that.
Yeah.
Then when we have our meeting on that down the road, we can settle it in stone.
Like I said, they'd be happy to help you out, keying it back in and then fit in and everything. Ready to rock and roll whenever you like that.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, I'm gonna skip to Jeremy Bostafel for the wastewater application.
Yes, I'm actually going to let these guys talk, but I bought this property recently. We were hoping to restore the old house there, that I think it was from 1910. It's a 3-bedroom house for 100 years. And unfortunately, it was just impossible to restore. We had to take it down. It was a mess. We discovered they'd insulated the walls, by the way, with mattresses, which is nothing. So we took that house down. There was another structure on the property that was in a little better shape, but it wasn't all year round. And so we took the old house down and we got Casella, and I found out how expensive they are to take all the mess away. And they're busy doing some construction now on the decent piece of building. The other is now flat on the ground, which still needs a bit of cleaning up, but it's mostly cleaned up. But I'll let Larry and these guys talk, because unfortunately I don't hear the reason.
What our plans, what his plans are is to put
where the old house sits, and it, you know, have the new place he's building up on top of the hill and an additional tiny home.
This is on Sinclair.
Sinclair, one
On the
block.
right-hand side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, Drew Fairbanks.
Yep,
living in that.
yep.
Yes, we're reacting toward most of it down now, but putting one house where the building existed on the upper side. We need to tie that into the sewer, plus we wanna put a tiny house in where the existing house used to be.
Now, is this in the village property?
It's outskirts of village, but it's got village sewer.
It's
To
the
Tourangeau.
town sewer service area district,
Okay.
so the town also has to.
So last time we talked about that, they were saying it did go through planning commission to add on.
Well,
Drew was talking to the select board about it,
yeah, it needs approval from the select board.
and he didn't get it at that time, that was I
don't think he's ready to.
because I was involved with that, because Drew wanted the conventional septic above my well, so that's why I was knowledgeable about that one. And they said it had to go, I don't know the exact word, but I thought it had to go through the planning committee before
They
it
want
could
the planning commission to,
be approved.
but he's already in the town sewer service area.
Okay.
And this is just for this application is just for the second building. Correct?
We wanna look into the existing sewer pipe that's there, but we wanna add, so we can put a tiny home where the existing house was.
Because you're grandfathered for one connection.
Right, right. And they're saying, from what Troy, Dolan, and a couple other guys were told, that the house up the road from that, their sewer comes through that property and then goes down, so we really can't watch where we dig there, so that's why we kind of wanted to tie into that wall. Because we don't wanna start messing with the neighbor's sewer lawn.
Oh, I have no problem with it. I'd motion that we allow it as long as it's under what you were
Yeah,
saying.
pending town approval.
Yep.
The second, that's motion.
I may just say something, I got my first water sewer bill today. It was a huge $13.56.
Oh, it's gonna go off, don't worry.
It just, I think it's something separate, I wanna say, the house on this end here was insulated with newspaper.
And the mattress.
Yeah, no, this one was here. I tore the building down and actually sat here. Before, the house that was here before this building was built, and it had in the walls newspaper for insulation.
Same
And-
thing up at our house. where
And my grandfather, we found a paper, my grandfather was Pat, and his name was in that paper.
Wow. You have
Yeah.
to say that, like.
Yeah, my
You framed
uncle saved that paper there.
Somebody should make a
It was
motion.
kind of comical that they had newspapers.
All right, so we got a motion on the floor
This will be for preliminary approval.
for preliminary approval. Is there a second?
Pending.
Select board approval and you'll need state permits before we can do final approval.
Is
Where
there a
else is that?
Water and sewer permits,
State water and sewer permit, and how do we obtain?
contact the state for that.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
So I motion that we go with this permit on conditions of select board approval and state water approval.
There's a second, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes.
Congratulations. Now, if you wanna run a lot of water down the sewer up there.
Now you can start.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, I know. So how does that get metered actually?
They meet in the spring.
Spring. Gotcha. Gentlemen, we're all set.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ken, thank you for sticking around.
I like
Try
it.
to,
Oh, thank you.
My son collects Dodges. He restored for 13 years a Dodge Challenger from 78 Plum Creek.
That's when they were nice.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Ken is going to make a couple presentations to us. Ken Nolan from Best. about catering and a program up at the NDU, correct?
Want me to speak or further?
Sure.
All right, good evening. I handed out some documents before the meeting started. This is on the advanced metering project. Just like quickly walk you through those and answer any questions you might have. As background, we started looking at this advanced metering project about 3 years ago. Started out with a request for information to a number of vendors around the country. 9 responses to that, boiled it down to 3 vendors we went through a formal request for proposals with. From those 3 vendors, we actually had a committee made up of all the municipalities we work with, managers, line workers, meter readers, office staff, scored those 3 vendors and picked one. So Clara Systems was the winning vendor. So now we're in the process of finalizing contracts and actually moving to installation. Just to set the reason why we're doing this, most of the state actually got these advanced meters back in 2009 when the federal government was handing out money for the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or ARA it was called. That provided 50% off the cost. So roughly 90% of the customers in the state got meters at that time. The small municipalities couldn't make it work economically, even with the 50% off. So all the towns that we work with chose not to take that funding and install meters. So fast forward a decade later, we haven't seen really the meter prices come down, but we've seen with the advances in cloud computing, we've been able to change the structure and actually reduce the cost through consolidation investment. So we're moving forward under that premise. Also, the state now, because they are promoting electrification of heating and electric vehicles and so on, they're really promoting time of use rates. So charging people based on the hours when they're using the power. They've actually put in the transportation bill last year, a requirement that all utilities have time of use rates by 2024. And you can't really do those kind of rates unless you have this meter. So it's another regulatory reason we're moving forward. So tonight, I just want to kind of walk you through what the system looks like, how it's put together, and some information about the costs and benefits for Johnson. So we start with the slide in front of you, labeled the Clara Solutions RF Technology Options. I'm just going to kind of walk through this. This is all the components of the system. Starting on the left-hand side, obviously the meters. So the meters that go on inside the customer's house. Those would be changed out. They're essentially computers now hanging outside of people's homes. They're not the old mechanical ratchet arms that you used to have 50 years ago, electronic. They also can do the same thing.
So is that what it will look like, the central pole? That's not.
The upper left-hand picture, the 2 meters there.
Yeah.
So you'd be replacing, if this project goes forward, you'd be replacing every meter in your territory with these new meters. You have to pull all these existing meters off and put in new ones. You're one of the.
Oh, go ahead.
Well said.
Yeah.
You're one of the utilities that has water as well as electric, so you can also use the water meters on this system. So a lot of our members just do the electric, but for those folks that have water, it actually improve the economics being able to do this. So we have included the water meters in your share of the project. It's an assumption at this point. The meters communicate back to called a DCU, or data collection unit, that's located, there are about 12 of them located around your system on poles. They're essentially off of We do an RF study of how the radio frequency is going to off data on your system, and that's how you determine where these things are located. So in your case, you're fairly compact, so it's not going to be that difficult. But some of you get to Hardwick, for example, Lindenville, where they have a lot of area out in the wilderness, it's a little harder for them to figure out where to look. And between the meters and that data collection unit, it's a 400 megahertz RF signal, so it's radio frequency. It's a licensed frequency, so we have to actually get a license from the FCC. That means you're the only ones in this area to get to use that frequency. It helps getting the data transmission. At the data collection unit, it's actually connected to outside either fiber optics. If we have a consolidated phone line going by, we can use their phone lines. Can use cell phones connect, but there's from the data collection unit back to the software, it's basically connected to the internet, however we can make that connection. And then on the right-hand side is the software that operates the whole system that is cloud-based. The Clara Systems actually has a data center that they operate just for this purpose, and that's what we use. So that's kind of the network we're talking about putting, right, from the meters to these collection units using the internet to a cloud solution.
And that's going to be mandated in 2 years by the state?
The being able to do time of use rates. People have been asking for several years, is the state actually going to force us to do advanced metering? And my answer has been pretty much the same. They're not going to dictate that you put the meters in, but they're going to put requirements on you for the rates they want you to do that essentially have the same effect. You can't do the rates they want without having this technology. That's where we are. We're going to have to somehow do time of use rates by the end of 2024. This is the easiest and cheapest way to do that. And it's still not cheap.
They were still at about 2 million.
You're actually quite a bit less.
Really? So it's come down when we did get there. And that's including the water meter?
Yeah, I'll run you through the economics here. Yeah. The next one is the slide with blue with orange in the middle. Just want to kind of walk you through the structure that we've come up with for our. So the top of the sheet, it's labeled DCU1, DCU2, and so forth. That's the data collection units out in the field. They're going to communicate back to this software package called the Clara One. This is the software that's in the cloud. But that has two components, something called the head end, and that's the software that actually runs the meters. So you can use it to reprogram the meters, you can use it to ask for on-demand reads, so reaching out to the meters one at a time and asking for information. You can use it to set how often the meters communicate back and send information to you, what information gets sent back. We're anticipating that that is going to be shared by all of the member utilities. They're going to be in one database. Essentially, it's going to look like VEPS as a holding company, and all of the members are like divisions of that company. So they're setting that. The multi-tenant MDM, it's a meter data management system. So that's the database that's going to house all of the meter reads. If you think about it, right now you get 1 meter read per customer per month. Pretty easy. I don't say easy, but it's manageable to handle. Once the system gets installed, you're going to get 1 meter read per customer every 15 minutes. Plus, you're going to be able to get the net metering, or anyone that has a solar project, that'll be recorded on the same meter. Plus, you can get reactive power on that customer. It's not just the kilowatt hours they use, but how efficient they're using that energy. Could possibly get voltage readings on every customer every 15 minutes. So there's massive amounts of information in the brought back. It's all stored in this meter data management system and is accessible. You can query it.
Because who has access to that?
So the way we're structuring it, VEPSA will have access to all of the information that's in there, be able to manage it on behalf of the members. We'll be able to do the background work. Staff in each of the utilities will have access to your specific data. There'll be firewalls between Johnson and Enosburg and Swanton. You'll see your data. We'll be able to have a central staff person that can work across the utilities that need help. And Aclara will actually be running the database itself. They won't have access to the customer reads, but they'll be updating the software and making sure that it's operating for data. That's what we're talking about.
So VEPSA doesn't really have to have access to this. What do I want to say? It doesn't cost us anything to have VEPSA doing this, right? Doesn't cost the town anything.
I'm not sure.
Costs us a lot of money. We have to buy the meters and install.
That part of it.
Yeah,
But you're kind of monitoring, you're not.
it's built into what you pay us anyway, so you're not paying extra for that. The other thing, by us having access to it, we can use it for analytics as well, like load forecasting, doing rate cases, access to information to be able to analyze load shapes, like residential class load shape, when they're using energy. That becomes useful when we're doing rate cases and trying to tell you how to structure things to minimize costs. Helps us doing the bids and the energy markets. But no, I mean, didn't really know how to answer your question because there is a cost to running the system, but you're not going to pay us extra for monitoring.
And how many other towns are you sending this proposal out to?
We have 11 members, all 11 are getting the proposal. So far, no one's signed a contract yet, but everyone's indicating they're good. We actually are talking to a utility in New Hampshire. Ashland, New Hampshire is also looking at this. It's contemplating joining this. On the bottom side, so the most basic thing you want to get out of these systems is to still be able to get your bills out. It's good. You need that like money. So there is going to be a connection built into the project that's making the connection between this new software, the meter data management system, and your existing billing system. So the raw data is stored in the database, the meter data management system. But you need to compile that information into a billing determiner to generate a bill to send to a customer. So there's a process that needs to be developed to make that raw data into a bill that then your billing system can bring that into a billing system. There's a software fee associated with it. But we'll be making the connection between the meter data management system and your existing billing system that's built into the project.
So does that mean our office staff we're putting in a new software program for this and they need to be trained on how to do this, how to use this?
Your billing system would be the same. They would have access to the meter data management system. So that would be new software that they would be using. And there's training provided as part of it. But part of the reason we want to invest a staff person too, because you have turnover, you have a rough month, you may need some help. We want to be there for that stuff. But each utility will have training and access to the software. So. Other questions on this?
Is the software a one-time fee for setup or is there a maintenance fee for the software?
There's both a one-time setup fee and then a monthly per meter charge.
And that's so that we can basically assess your data from your site, saying what we can charge.
The monthly fee is because Aclara, as the software vendor, is taking all responsibility for making sure the software stays up to date. If it's not built on a Microsoft base package, so they're responsible for making sure if Microsoft does updates, they apply it. If they change their software, they're responsible for making sure that it still meshes with your system, that they don't break into it. If you go back to the folks who did this in 2009, most of them paid a one-time fee. They didn't pay a monthly maintenance fee. But 6 or 7 years later, they were getting charged to upgrade their software because things had changed and they hadn't kept up. The way we're structuring it, you pay the monthly fee, but that vendor is responsible for it.
Per meter fee? The fee is a per meter fee?
It's a per meter, yes.
What's the current estimate on that?
It's $3 per month.
Contract good for how long? The price is locked in for a period of time, I'm assuming?
So, jumping ahead of my presentation, but okay. We're projecting Johnson's annual cost to be about a little over $8,000. And that's locked in for the first 3 years, no increase. Then they're allowed to do an inflationary increase after that, up to 2%. 10-year contracts, so after 10 years, so we'll be either renewing or replacing.
So that means we don't need, when we have this, that means we don't send anybody out to read meters.
In theory, although I want to caution you, because Vermont law allows customers to opt out. You can't deny them if they want to opt out. What we're finding is when you first make the conversion, 2% roughly. So you might get 4 or 5 people who say that they don't want a meter. Then you have to do something in order to read their meters.
So does a private, let's say you have a big apartment building, you've got 20 meters, everybody has their own electric meter, and they do this smart meter thing. Does the owner of that building have access to the data that is collected from those meters?
So whoever pays the electric bill, the person who the account's name is under would be the one who could opt out or opt in. They're the ones who have access to the data. If the landlord's paying the electric bill, then they would get access.
So if the renter is paying, so if there's a renter in the house and they're paying the electric bill and they say, I don't want that meter on the homeowner's property, that renter has the right to say no to that? So what if it's put on there and then the renter comes in and says, I don't want that there?
Have to pull it out. Now, that usually does not happen.
Yeah.
In fact, when I was doing this in Burlington 10 years ago, what they were doing, the first time we went through, we had about a 4% opt-out rate. As people moved out, if they didn't have an advanced meter, they went and put an advanced meter before the next person moved in. And 99% of the time, that new person
Most
coming
people
in,
don't have a clue about it anyway.
they didn't opt out. So it usually goes the other way.
Yeah.
You rarely see people move in and say, we'll take that meter.
So how's that gonna work? Because you won't be able to charge them the fluctuating rate that you discussed.
Then they're opting out from having that ability to track usage.
So when I do that, I'm gonna save money by not getting charged. It's a high demand rate when you look and says, see Ken's at his shop running his welder, the air conditioner's on and he's drawing power up. Some of them, if I don't let you switch my meter, you're not gonna be able to tell me that. Or charge me that because you can't see that I'm drawing that demand.
You wouldn't necessarily save money because Johnson, and so this is why I say we could redesign the rates, right? So right now you get just a flat kilowatt hour charge. Everybody pays the same. If you put in advanced meters for 95% of your customers or more, then those folks are going to have access to that flat rate, or they can choose the time of use rate. It's usually structured as you opt in, so you pick which rate you want. But as more people move over to the time of use rate, the folks that are left on that flat rate, typically you're going to see them using more electricity. It's going to be the folks like you described. So when you do your rate design, when that's to help you change the rates, what you're going to find at the time of use rate, if you can shift off those peak hours, you're going to be able to save money. If you stay on the flat rate, that number is going to go up. So you're going to be paying more per kilowatt hour on the flat rate. So I'm not saying that people who look at it can decide which rate is cheaper, and they could save money that way, but I don't think it's gonna be as big of a savings as you might originally think when you're looking.
I'm just saying that the peak rate falls when everybody gets home from work and starts using power, so.
Yeah, well, the peak rate that the state's talking about is when are you incurring your costs? It's tied to when New England as a whole is using the most power. And typically in the summertime, that's like midday. It's Boston, Hartford are driving most of the load, and it's the businesses down there. So you actually will see the peak period typically is like 12 to 5, and the off-peak period will be after that. One of the benefits to being rural in Vermont is we actually don't see those cost numbers. Just to finish this up, the business case that I handed out, the only thing I want to point out here is that if you have questions about it, feel free to reach out to me, but it talks about a little bit more about how the meters work and how it would integrate with your operations. Wanted to point you quickly to the last page. There's a table and a chart on the last page. So the total cost that we're projecting right now for Johnson, and it's a moving target. We're actually finalizing the contract right now. Total cost we're looking at $720,000 for all the electric meters, all the water meters, the data collection units, software package.
And then there's the yearly fee.
It's a yearly fee, right, for about $8,000.
How much was it?
It's spreadsheet, $8,100.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I thought you said 1,000. And that's just for the software.
It's related to the software, but it's not all.
Yeah.
80,000 equates to about $3 a meter, so
I believe so.
that's an annual fee, correct? Okay. And then the 700 change for the meters and stuff like that, that's 65 over what period of time?
So 720,000 would be the year one for capital cost.
Right.
So
Is that a one-time payment or is it amortized over?
that's 720, the one-time cost. We're anticipating the project lasts 15 years.
Do you pay that over time, or do you pay that?
That is up to you.
The financier for that, do you have anybody who will finance this or is it something that works?
So the one-time cost, 720,000. Really up to you how you want to deal with that. The offset we're working on, the legislature approved in this last session. That's urgent. We got them to set aside $8 million for an advanced metering for municipal and cooperative utilities that don't have the capability to do time experience. That's the members of Johnson, Washington Electric Co-op, and Vermont Electric Co-op in some of their territory. So they have areas they didn't get to with the ARPA. We asked for 11 million, the state set aside 8 million. Right now, we're negotiating and trying to figure out how that money gets split up. Thinking we're going to get about between 4 and 6 million of that money. Then will be allocated pro rata to all the members. If we take the total project cost that Jessica has for all of the members and allocate out to each one based on the meter counts you have, we think Johnson would get around $180,000 of grant money toward this project.
And that's for the first year.
That would go against the capital.
That would be, yeah.
So
Against the 720.
Well, that's better.
So we've been negotiating with banks for the last 8 months. We've got a couple of proposals in hand right now. We believe we can get financing through Vepsa where you would pay nothing up front, it would just be rolled into a monthly fee. Same ones we're charging for the software. With that loan, it would be a 10-year loan. Right, when interest rates are bouncing off crazy. Yeah. They haven't locked in yet, but right now it's about 5%. So that is an option to finance through us. What we're finding is many of the members, because they have existing relationships with the banks, they often, and your municipality with the taxing capability and the ability to set the electric rates, often you can borrow money cheaper than we can. So we recommend you think about financing it yourself, but if you can't or don't want to, then that is an mechanism we can consider it for.
That would still need village public vote on, right?
Unclear. I'm being, the legal advice I'm getting, and you're gonna wanna check with your own attorney. But if it's a contract through VEPSA, it's not actually a debt obligation as such of the village, you'd be entering a contract with us. So we'd have to look at what approvals you need to enter a long-term contract with VEPSA.
But if village went to a separate bank, they would have to have village approval for that.
Yeah, I think if you went and borrowed yourself, you have to have approval on your charter. When it's a VEPSA debt, it's not, you wouldn't be reflecting the debt on your books. So it would be whatever approval you need to enter the contract.
That's very similar to the transfer stuff.
So in your numbers, do you have, I mean, we obviously have some real numbers on cost and what cost is coming from the state, you know, that are mandating it. So you're looking at, guessing around $70,000 increase to our utility per year, for the contract. We have a rate increase it would take to cover that debt.
No. Part of what we went through, we had a consultant come in and help look at for each of the numbers. You're increasing the metering costs on one hand, but there are other offsetting the power supply benefits being under the most time of use rates are in. We're gonna ask them to manage charge reductions on your power supply costs. Truck rolls will be greatly decreased, you're not gonna have to send meter readers out.
Well, you don't have some our crews still get paid, but they're reading meters or not, so there's no cost savings to that whatsoever.
From a line worker cost, that's true. And we got
from the expenditure cost, our linemen get paid line of wages no matter what we're doing, so they're reading meters or they can dish or get paid the same, we still need the same amount of crew to go to provide the service that we're providing, so there's no financial gain for the village as far as employees are concerned. So that aside, is there any indication in the future of trying to do a best guess? Because if you're talking about the power supply, rate changes, stuff like that, because demand, high demand, is there any way to get a possible number of the percentage of rate increase to the village ratepayers to move forward with this, which I don't think there's anything not to because of the state's mandate, but just to give kind of the board a heads up as to what kind of increase we're talking about. We're already looking at a rate increase just because of shortfalls of the department anyway, just to add that. To get the user some sort of indication that, hey, we're looking at 23% increase, or 12% increase, possible to make that coming down the road, it will be very evident. Is that something that you're capable of doing? And I know it's a lot of math, but yeah, that's way beyond me, but that's why you guys, the smart guys are there to do this stuff.
I don't know how smart, but experience, I'll put it that.
Okay, experience speaks for a lot.
Yes, I think we could. I think what we're seeing right now, though, is a projection of the savings we were seeing between the power supply costs, customer service savings for the customers not having to be running out doing one-off meter reading checks. They're usually the savings, not so much on the labor cost, but on your vehicle costs and fuel, there's some savings on that side as well. So,
Did you say we're very small?
Yeah.
Small networks.
Yeah,
so
it won't be-
those costs are negligible.
won't be as big as other people, so. We're not showing anybody actually needing an imminent rate case.
Okay, all right.
But something we definitely gonna have to monitor as we roll it out, and if we don't see the savings materialize as expecting, then that quite possibly could occur. But what we're trying to do is smooth this out as much as we can. State funding, I think, will help quite a bit. We can smooth out and turn this into, instead of having to come up with the money front, one time, spread it over a 15-year period. By setting the contracts, so we're minimizing the inflationary increases. To get it into a smooth, you're not gonna see a lot of jumping around in costs.
Sorry, Steve, I'd like to put out to the board that this is what benefits of that stuff. They went on behalf of small munis, which no one gives a shit about. And look at that and are getting the funds because of their diligence and their expertise and their experiences.
So what happens to the neuters if something happens to the Wi-Fi? What happens if something happens and the power goes out for crap? I mean, a big, like the ice storm that we had 15 years ago. What?
Or cyber stuff.
Or cyber stuff, yeah.
Yeah, so cybersecurity is a big concern. The meters themselves have cyber built into this encryption, and there's I call it a handshake. That's not the technical term the cyber folks use, but there's a key that's sent from the software to the meter every time a meter read occurs, and the key has to match up or else it won't communicate. So they're very tight on cybersecurity. And that's part of the reason we went with the cloud-based, because it's in the Azure, Microsoft Azure cloud, you've got Clara technicians and Microsoft technicians who manage the cybersecurity.
Where is this company out of, Clara out of?
South Carolina. We're trying to keep as US based as possible, and actually some of the funding requires that you use US parts and manufacturing.
It should.
As far as the power outage, so the meters themselves will hold up to 45 days worth of data. So if you get a power outage for a day or a week, it's going to store that information, and when the power comes back, it'll transmit it so you can have it available. If that occurs in a time when you normally would build, the software side has built in it the ability to estimate a customer's bill. So you could still generate a bill based on an estimate, and then that would get trued up the next month once you get the actual readings. Very unlikely you would actually lose information. It's just a question of having it stored in the meter until you get the communications. And that does happen, believe it or not, with the trees always being out. Sometimes the meters have trouble.
Right.
Even if power's on.
Right.
So one of the other benefits of this is the meters will send outage signals. If they lose power, then the last thing they do when the power goes out is send the signal back over the networks and time out of power. So you'll start to get
And it
information.
sends it.
It'll send it to the cloud, which then can be structured to send the notice directly to the utility that there's an outage. So you'll start to hear from the meters before you get the calls from customers once they install. So other than that, if there's any other questions, just wanted to get it in front of you tonight. We're still wrapping up the grant conversation. Last information I had from the state was it'll be August, September before we know the final number. We're finalizing the contract with Clara now, so we can nail down the pricing side of this. And next step from your standpoint would be we're putting in place a contract between BEPSA and each of the utilities, basically back to back. So we'll sign the agreement with Clara for everybody, and then each utility we would ask to sign an agreement with us, passing the cost through and committing to the project. I expect it'll be a couple of months before we're ready to have that conversation.
When do you expect to really be rolling where you're gonna want us to sign and we're gonna start getting meters?
So it's a little flexible there. We're anticipating 4 pretty much committed already. We're gonna start, assuming we can get the funding from the state lined up, we're planning on starting in October. And then we'd be looking for another 4 to go next year. So ideally, we would be back to you sometime late fall, wanting you to decide yes or no, and then we can get you lined up this fall. So we can get you lined up for next year to start the installation.
And who installs them, our crew?
Your choice. In the budget we've given you includes money, assuming we have to hire contractors to do it. But it's certainly something your crew is capable of doing, and if you wanted to dedicate their time to that, then the cost would be an internal cost instead of having to get a contract.
It's not much more than them showing up to read the meter.
Yeah, it's a little more steps because
You gotta set it up.
as you transition, you want to make sure you document what the previous meter had on it when you pull the meter, put the new one on. There's a registration process that has to go through. So minimal. No other questions on that? Can talk about NBU for a second.
Sure.
So it's a separate agenda item. You may be aware, about a year ago, Betsy started a key accounts program. So we have a person on staff whose job now, part of their job, is to go meet with largest customers in each of their member territories. So we've identified 12 customers, one in each territory that represent the largest account. We're actively making outreach to them, trying to understand what they see as their biggest challenge and figure out if there's a way for either VEPSA or either their utility to help them solve it. We want to make sure we're getting as close a relationship as we can, both for economic development, we want to keep customers happy and growing. But from a regulatory standpoint, each utility in the state has an obligation to help customers switch off from fossil fuels. And there's a penalty if you don't do, financial penalty if you don't meet your targets. What we have found is the largest customers usually have the biggest projects, biggest equipment that they can move off fossil fuels. So you get the biggest benefit of moving them, and they tend to be the cheapest cost to help do that. So if we want to go out and give an incentive for a customer to buy an electric vehicle or put a heat pump in their home, that incentive payment that you have to pay costs you about $30 a megawatt hour equivalent. Doing that, a larger project at a commercial or industrial entity, the incentive you need to pay them to get them to move is closer to $5 to $10 a megawatt hour. So it's much cheaper to work with the larger customers. Still offer the incentive to residential folks. I mean, we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity. But as far as meeting your regulatory requirement, we tend to get a much more bang for the buck. They work in the water. That was the whole reason for putting the key accounts program together. One of the customers we've been talking to is Governor Vermont University, the Johnson campus. The same person who runs the facilities in Johnson also runs their Lindenville campus. So we're dealing with them in both locations because Lindenville is the number also. We're just told, of course, you're all well aware of the controversy when they were talking about closing the campus down and there. We were just informed that the legislature gave the university some funding, but it came with a string that they have to look to cut 25% of their costs across the university. The facilities person that was in charge of the campuses has now been put in charge of that cost-cutting program. And he has informed our key accounts person that his primary target, where he thinks he's going to get the most money savings, is looking at the electric and water bills in Johnson. We're concerned that this on the electric and water bills that the Johnson campus could actually be prelude to a bigger conversation about the campus, not here. So we're trying to be active and engaging with the campus facilities manager. He's going to be hiring a consultant to come in and review the whole operations. And he's working with Efficiency Vermont, bringing them into the discussion as well. We're trying to get that as part of that dialogue. The first item that they've identified is they don't like the demand charge of the campus. But they don't have a good way to identify which buildings are causing the peak load campus, and the meter that's there, get back to stuff. So the meter itself, the campus itself has like 5 meters, but there's one that is by far the largest. Most of the campus itself, all the buildings up there are on one, what's called a primary meter. So there's one meter that serves the whole campus, and all the usage flows through that. And it is not a time of use meter. It registers kilowatt hours across the month and the 1 hour in the month when the peak occurs, but it doesn't tell them which hour that is. It just says, oh, your peak was 500 kilowatts. They have no idea what time or what they can do. So we've been talking to Government Efficiency Vermont about if there's an ability to put that, replace that primary meter with an hourly meter that gives them the load shape of the campus as a whole, which would be something Johnson would have to sign off on because that's your meter. And then Efficiency Vermont actually has metering, temporary metering they can put on each building that also gives the load shape of each building. So that would give the campus enough information to start trying to figure out which buildings are contributing to setting their peak load and see if they can do something to fix that. That would help. If we could pull it off, it would help them reduce their demand charges, but it also could result in savings for the village, because if they can reduce the demand costs, then you see that reflected in your wholesale power costs. So that conversation is just beginning, but I wanted to make you aware that maybe an ask coming to change out that one primary meter to something that can record hourly. And in the longer term, we want to make sure that you and VEPSA are in the middle of the conversation about what they do with that campus. Because it seems what we're hearing, at least at this point, is when they're looking at the 25% cost reduction, it's going to be focused up here and how they can reduce their operating costs of the campus. We want to, if we can, turn that into economic development for you. Point out that they might be able to get rid of some fossil fuel generators, for example, and maybe go use more electricity and still save money. I'll stop there and answer questions if you got.
So would it involve a lot of wiring, changing like internal wiring to separate out the buildings so that you can have a lot of separate meters? Or how would you do that?
Yeah, I don't know that you need to have separate meters on each building. I don't think you would necessarily, if you want to go separate meters on every building, you could do it by cutting the wire that's serving them now. You have to basically put a meter panel at each building and install a meter. So it's not mechanically difficult to do. It's expensive to do, putting a meter on every one and having it there permanently.
I don't think the state will allow that, because fire department guys, they need to be able to go to one location, kill the power before they start spraying water.
Yeah.
So I ran into that installed in an apartment building.
I mean, you could still have the primary meter and then sub metering on each building if you wanted to, but they want to be able to kill it. I mean, the complicating factor here is, as I understand it, the university owns the electric lines inside the campus. So that's something they would have to sign up for and be willing to do. If they're looking at cost cutting and not wanting to spend capital, it's probably not high on the list of things to do. I think we can get close to the same effect if we put that one hourly meter at the primary, and then with Efficiency Vermont, use some temporary metering on each building, you can get pretty close to what they need to do changes. The bigger issue though is, I mean, as this conversation about changing the operations and how do they make it more efficient, as that happens, we want to make sure we're part of it. So that we can not only help them find efficiencies, but do so in a way that doesn't shift costs from campus back to other customers. So tonight was just make you aware our Julie Leopold, who's our key accounts person, is actively trying to get part of that conversation. We'll keep you informed as it happens, and certainly if there's anything else we can help with.
Present recess for a couple of weeks. Diane, to see what the status is on that.
Right.
Yeah, good effort.
It's not Harriet King's property. It was never Harriet King's. All right, where do we go for that? Monday night. I did speak to Ryan and Dave, but we're not waiting for Dylan. Unfortunately, Harriet.
Yes, yeah.
She's my mother, and she's always.
You're gonna leave? How can you leave an exciting meeting like this?
They used to do this all the time.
You're mostly everything.
I hope so.
So Linda is going to.
We actually plan on staying in the part of your town, and you'll find out the great. My mother's my mother, and I was. And Jim wanted us to have a property. And if you drive here,
We don't have
just sitting out there and helping you out. We usually do. We're a little short of money right now. Don't worry, I work every day.
we're hearing from.
Unfortunately, I have 3 dogs. Very good at this.
Yes, it is. It's a mic, somebody.
Nice week.
I know him pretty well. Well, where are you going?
We were, we own River Road, the trash pile. Have you ever been out? My mom and stepfather, Jim actually owned the land. My mom, after Jim died, she kind of, we're at the rock. You can only do what you can do.
Seriously,
Always remain calm.
it doesn't do any good. Doesn't do any good. One step at a time.
That's not in the village, though, right?
Over on River Road.
Over going towards Manchester.
Yep.
Past the four farms.
Yeah, I know.
Oh,
Is
past
that
the
still the village?
No, it's not.
No. You don't have to.
No. No, there was a meeting about us and some words, and we were told this was the meeting, so we thought.
No, it's, when
Next week.
Next
Next
week.
week.
Next Monday.
What's that, select board?
Yes. Yeah. So, sorry, you.
That's all right. It's actually
Lessons
nice.
learned.
No, actually, it's nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh, I remember about 40 years ago.
I don't think so.
What you fees?
Yeah, you too. Oh, we're getting older.
Yeah.
I feel it today. This guy's working behind me. Okay.
So the select board meeting starts at
7
7.
is what road.
And then we can do she's a gender. She was Hatfield.
Been gone for 40 years.
You work slow there?
Yeah. 83.
Take the son to a hockey. Yeah.
I can read sometime.
But Jamie wants to learn more about it.
And
I know they doesn't.
Yeah. Thank you. Tuesday night, tomorrow night, music on the field on the school street.
well, it's the opposite.
And I thought it was.
It's really fun, it's really nice. Yeah, that'll really like tonight is 3 weeks. Same place.
Well,
Every night. You'll get to meet.
We touched about the job description.
Normally we're there.
We're trying to show people that
Get it out with some more class.
just because, my mom,
What about
she dumped 100 pounds.
Army Corps?
I don't know where it is.
Somebody was telling me.
I don't think Diane is gonna make it tonight.
Yeah.
We just
So, the rest of the business.
Well, where's the?
And we stand just him.
So when I don't know.
And up a little further is the next one.
No one has told me that, but I'm
Just,
also-
No, I don't want to bury it, I want to. Trash is trash and they already buried for 40 years. Remember how they said, well, they buried the trailer and dug up, well. It's one of the things, so. And we're hoping the neighbors.
But we went to the night, right?
Of course.
Paul's a friend of mine. I feed the thing for him so he can have a day off.
Oh, there you go.
If you look back in the 80s, I actually, 90s, I were founders.
Wow.
Used to run the Thomas.
Wow.
So it was around. right?
You were around.
Yeah. we used to work on that.
Yeah, yeah. So he's younger, he's. Yeah, I'm here. We'll see you.
Don't stay too late.
We'll see you Tuesday night live.
Tuesday night live.
6 o'clock tomorrow night.
Brian Monahan isn't gonna make it tonight. We're gonna have to do schedule. Our attorney isn't gonna be able to make it tonight. Our attorney is not gonna be able to make it.
Okay. What do we have him for? What are we gonna use him for?
To have him update us on the whole, legal stuff.
The guys down there and him coming back and all that stuff. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, take your time. Just interested in the thought you had.
So you need to go bear hunting on someone, so. It's free up there.
There's bear everywhere.
One of them is a bear.
Oh, really? Cameras all side, more actors.
One that's like a slave.
We're going with so many smokes, we ended up getting a paintball gun.
Yeah,
and got trained on it.
he got trained on paintball gun. Goodness.
Yeah.
That's why you're on the porch going, hey, you're not supposed to be eating that, Mr. Bear.
Go, Mr. Bear.
September.
I'm gonna call the meeting back to order. And we'll try to get through the rest of this agenda,
What's next?
starting with review and approve minutes of trustee meetings. Did we already do that?
Yeah.
Great.
We know.
Treasurer's report.
Did you wanna do Dan's?
Okay, sure. Dan, you're up. We can, let you, go to bed after this.
On the wastewater end, the EDMR and the WR-43 were submitted to the state. We had a problem with the Penn Valley sludge pump that feeds the belt press. We tore it apart and found a damaged disc in it. We replaced both discs as this pump had not been totally gone through. We'll order a new set of discs to have on hand, and it's operating properly now. We found and replaced the solenoid valve that had failed on one of the processed water pumps. Both pumps are operating now. On June 21st, we had a heavy load of pure white milky substance come into the headworks. It lasted for quite a few minutes. We grabbed a sample of it and sent it to the lab to see if it was high in BOD or TSS. It came back fairly normal on BOD, but had a very high total suspended solids, TSS. I contacted NVU to see if anything came from there. I've had that experience in Mooresville that floor stripper will do that. They were stripping the floors and said they dumped several gallons of waste down the drain. In my opinion, this was more than a couple of gallons. So whether that was the issue or not, I don't know. But I advise them that they can't dump large quantities at one time and to pour a little bit, wait an hour, and then a little bit more. Floor stripper can be toxic in large quantities. I also contacted the elementary school and they said they were not doing any maintenance that week. So there's no way for certain to know where the loading came from. I did my best to cover the potential businesses that it could have come from. J. McDonald started on replacing the River Road pump station. There have been a few minor hiccups, but overall the project is going well and should be completed by the second week of August. I've been to several construction meetings to deal with a variety of small issues that have come up, but nothing overwhelming. It seems to be going pretty smoothly, so that's good news. I performed an H2O innovation safety audit at both the water and the wastewater plants. We found no major issues were identified. There were several administrative issues that we noted, and those have been corrected. On the water side, I talked with Ship 7 several times. They weren't happy at the expense they would incur to move the well pump and pressure tank out of the meter house. I offered for them to hook onto municipal water and forego their drilled well. The lines are already metered, and we would replumb them when we do the rest of the plumbing. They're metered for the sewer that we take now. They seem to be leaning that way, and we would also gain 2 new hookups if they choose this option. Coliform samples were negative, and the water loss for June was 17%. So after I submitted this report, I got a letter from Ship 7 today. I'll read it to you now. He said, "Thank you for taking the time to speak to me and throwing around the ideas on the best way to remove the well pump and pressure tank from the village-owned meter house. We are hoping that you will allow the house and garage to be hooked up to the village water system. If this is possible at the time of transition, we would schedule to have the Ship 7 equipment removed. I'm assuming if this is approved, the house and garage would be metered separately. Thank you for your time, Cindy Whiteman." So yes, they're already metered separately for sewer. So it basically would be just plumbing, disconnecting it from the well and putting our municipal water hooked up to when we replumb the entire inside of that meter house. I think it's a win-win for the village. You know, it gets rid of the issue we have with their equipment in our shed, and we get 2 hookups out of it. So I don't know as far as a connection fee or anything like that, that normally you guys would charge, how you want to handle that. I would tend to say not to charge a connection fee because we already have the meters in there. We already have the lines in there. It's going to be doing no more plumbing than what we're doing for every other meter that's in that house anyway. But that's just my suggestion. I guess I'm just looking for approval to tell them if you guys agree that that's the route you want to go on that.
How long will it take you to,
Sorry, say that again?
take you to rip that out of there and do the new connection?
I mean, we're gonna have to redo every connection in there, so I don't know how long. We would have to move theirs anyways to be able to do it. It's not gonna be any really more, just time, than anything else. A little bit of plumbing work, I mean, the cost of the village, I think, will probably be, under $100 in supplies. And we're talking probably $30,000 for that whole house, so it's very minimal.
Sounds like it makes sense, so.
Yep.
It works for us, and it obviously works for them because they don't have any upfront costs to it. I think that's where they were going.
Rest of that.
So you need a motion from the trustees?
I don't know if I need a motion necessarily. I just want to see if that's the route you guys want to go. We'll have to work on it as we get closer to next year with them. But I mean, if your guys are agreeable to that, I'll just pass that on to them. That that plan will work, and then we'll fine tune the details. We're ready to replumb the entire building.
Okay,
I think it's a good idea.
that's,
Somebody has their hand up on the screen.
yeah, she's asking to talk. Is this regarding the? Go ahead. How do you,
BJ has a muted.
I muted her because she was unmuted during it.
Just a minute.
Are you talking to me?
yes,
Okay, okay. This is a question. I own the third of an acre across the street from the municipal building and the firehouse. And I have a couple of questions. I've owned it for 35 years and I lived there for 20, but I moved 10 years ago to Illinois. And thanks to COVID, I haven't been back to Johnson in these last 3 years. And I'm looking at the property and I see it the way I've always seen it for 35 years, but maybe I need to look at it in a different way. Anyway, my question, I sent this to Brian and he said that that was not in his, well, I'm saying this, it was not in his job description to answer it. It belonged to the trustees. So I'm asking you, back in the day when I was on the planning commission, there was some talk about putting in a sidewalk on the north side of Route 15 and also burying the utility cables.
That's not.
Is that in a plan anywhere in the next 10 years?
I don't believe so.
Okay, okay. Because that reminds me of when the state wanted to widen Route 15 and they took some of the ledge, which would not bother me very much if they took, if you, the village, took some of the ledge, but it would make a difference in some way. So that's why I was asking if those two things were coming down the pike.
Not that I know of. Anybody else?
No, we're discussing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You can, Dan?
Yeah, yes, okay. And my other question is listening to today's meeting, which was very interesting, with regard to doing something on that property, is there a particular person that would be my go-to to discuss?
You're out of order, ma'am. We're on another piece of business. You'll have to, I'm not sure who that would be. But we thought your question was related to Dan Cobb's report.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, it isn't. It isn't.
We'll try to answer your question though at a later date. Yeah, Will?
So see, on this issue they're talking about with the show park and stuff like that, a recommendation would be that you get a consensus of the board and then tell them that they get an application in, that you guys can get that get that approved with this board, the board changes, may have a different dynamic.
Okay.
I hate to see this opportunity to work with them go away. So that would be a suggestion.
With ship 7, you mean?
With ships out, yeah, have them, do a consensus and then just tell them to get an application in for the hookup and get that approved and taken care of. So that if something changes, then the board of this different sites could, not sure about that.
You've been talking with them, Dan, has anyone else have able to contact them or? Can you
Just been talking with them.
You talked to them about that? Getting a permit in?
No, I hadn't gotten that far. They just want to know if this was even feasible, and if it was, then we'll move forward.
It is feasible.
I can pass that along to them that they'll need to do an application
Right.
for municipal water.
Right.
That you guys, I will say that, you're in agreement that that would be a good route to pursue, so.
Great.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, we're moving to the treasurer's report.
Did you know that Brian and Kristen?
Oh, I just saw him there. Didn't quite recognize him. Okay, great, then we can.
Oh, Brian.
We can get a couple things out of the way and move to him.
Okay. You want to do him now?
Yeah. Right, so we're gonna go into an executive session again to speak to our attorney.
Or do you want to do mine really quickly?
I'd say we want to finish the agenda like we have it.
That is the last thing.
People sitting downstairs and Donna sitting downstairs,
all right.
back up in 20 minutes.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Thanks.
All right, let's finish the agenda. We'll be there in a minute, Brian. So the treasurer's reports, please.
I handed out the budget status report. Do that. And,
Oh, the tax rate. Everything.
yeah, no tax rate. Grand list for the village is going in the wrong direction. Last year was 615,000, now it's down to 613,000. Yeah, so that leaves a tax rate of 0.1827. And last year was 0.1820.
Well, we have to do it.
So there, motion is not there.
No, consider the town it down quite a bit. So it's cool.
All right, so I guess we're looking for a motion. To approve the tax.
Tax rate of 18.27%.
So
Second,
Second.
all in favor,
discussion.
discussion. All in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously.
Yeah, just take
This is the one to sign?
Sure, yep. Yes, Steve had it.
Guilty party.
Oh, Steve.
And I had a call from the pizza on the main guy. There's 3 picnic tables, so he was wondering if we could put them on the village green. He's hoping to get set up this week.
And he knows he needs an electrician, correct?
I think that's all the name.
Okay, because when I went over and put the grade stake up and I looked and saw that Mudgee's had pulled their wire and stuff.
Yeah, he had to go change it. I think Nate, caught him with that.
That's something I think we might have wanted to do, was to install that wire so that it stayed, but.
Uh-huh.
Well, just because when we did it, we told them, we're like, yeah, you just walk over and plug in and the operators can start charging you. I went over and looked, and, uh-oh.
Why did somebody leave and take the wire?
Wire out to where the meter is.
So that Mudgee's is no longer there.
They leave the,
They look the area, they
The conduit's there, yeah, they just pulled the wire. Yep.
So they're gone now.
Yeah, it's the pizza on Main's coming in.
Is the only one there.
Plus
And the coffee place.
I'm fine with the picnic tables, but 3 might be kind of a squeeze. We might want to try 2 and see how it
There was
goes.
3 or 4 there before.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd say we'd let them go with it unless we see a problem after, you
And I'll just
know.
take them back out.
He
But-
said it's kind of hard to do pizza on the
Yeah,
bench.
do we need a motion or you just?
And we'll take the benches out and put them.
I still think there's room, you know what I mean? You put 2 picnic tables together, it's not very long, so.
People will move the
Yeah.
benches and move things there.
That's great. It's moving in this week.
I think you got consensus.
Sometime this week. He was hoping for last week, but something happened.
I was wondering because I hadn't seen them, so I was
I
like.
know, I was wondering too.
In your packet, there's the Atlantis contract. This is for Town Village Work site. When you were doing the water project, they found petroleum.
Uh-oh.
This is testing, this is the second round of testing for that site, for the state, and Brian has said typically the town and village will pay half and the state will pay half, but the state has found some money, more grant money, and town and village should not have to pay anything for this stuff.
No, perfect. I know.
Steve signed the contract. This is for your information.
Okay.
State found some money.
Yeah, go figure. Okay, what's next?
You guys want to talk about the rural? On the town director.
Well, now this isn't the same picture they had in the email, is it?
I don't know. I asked Brian to print me out something. He said he thought this was the latest one.
Okay, because the pitchfork's missing on the old white dude. So my only concern with this is, how does this represent Johnson? And at the same time, we're watching Burlington rip down mural after mural after mural that was put up. Because in a year, somebody's not gonna like this. So, I mean,
It's not our building anyway, is it?
it's 50% our building.
There's gonna be a memorandum of understanding, it hasn't been signed, but it will be signed soon, that, we can do anything we want on our garage, and they can do anything they want on their garage, but it hasn't been signed yet.
Is this from the Racial Justice Committee?
Yes.
No, the beautification, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a beautification.
Oh, because it looks like a racial justice thing.
It is a little strange.
Well, I don't understand what's this.
It doesn't say
Go back to
us.
what you were saying, Steve.
Yeah.
That don't make any sense, because when we had a meeting and we discussed this, they put the brakes on any division, any stopping, any taking any buildings, anybody claiming anything. So how does it suddenly go to, we're gonna have an agreement that we can do what they want,
We already
they
do
can.
it, it's a memorandum of understanding.
I understand that, but
Not approved it yet.
we had a meeting with the select board over here when they wanted the food shelf building. And Will says, sure, and then they, whoa, everything stopped. They didn't want to go forward with any division, any separation of the properties. And suddenly we're gonna have an agreement on doing what you want
That
with each
memorandum
building.
together.
I have no idea, I've never heard of it till just now, that's why I'm asking this question.
No, on January 26th of this year, this memorandum of understanding went out to people. And it says responsibility to jointly owned buildings. And parties are the town of Johnson and the village of Johnson. And the purpose is to clearly state the entity, town or village has the responsibility to maintain, improve as necessary, and determine the appropriate use of each of the aforementioned buildings and who will pay the associated costs for such maintenance and improvements.
So it's on maintenance.
The term of this MOU
Yes.
begins January 12th, 2022, and will renew automatically every year on January 12th until it is canceled. So really, and then it says the village garage will be 100% responsible for the maintenance, improvements, and usage of the village garage. Decisions on building maintenance, improvements, and usage will only require the affirmative vote of the village board of trustees. Then the town garage is the very same wording as for the village garage.
I never received.
But
that.
that's also maintenance, that's not,
And how did they come to, how did this memorandum come about without us agreeing to it?
It wasn't,
We didn't have any conversations
No,
on
it
it.
hasn't been signed, but this was done
At the meeting we were at, when Mike had all of a sudden said, no, we don't want the food shelf building the well and us.
the food shelf, I believe, was agreed to be both.
Who agreed? Are you getting agreed from, Diana? Don't
So
we?
did the select board and the trustees meet and that's?
Yeah, and then we walked away because the select board didn't want to take responsibility of the food shelf building.
Yeah, but this other conversation must have happened.
We,
yeah, good in the meeting, yeah.
and we stopped
It just didn't get finalized.
so the eminent, MOA that you were talking about, Steve, I'm a little confused as to. I don't see it on the agenda, it's not there for next month, or
For what?
to approve this, it hasn't been approved, this was a working session. And these are things that were hammered out, nothing was signed, but Steve said that,
Okay,
Steve.
there's another way around this. We can just vote on it now to allow them.
No, it wasn't on the agenda. We can't vote on it.
So
So my only thing is, like, I think a mural honestly is a good
On
idea.
the agenda.
No, the thing she was reading.
Oh,
No,
right,
but-
right, no, we're
No,
doing
no, no,
a
no.
mural now.
Right.
I think a mural is a good idea, especially like if it's for Johnson, like a covered bridge or something in Johnson, but this to me is a racial justice thing. It seems like, to me, it's not really what makes Johnson Johnson. Is it our covered bridges? Is it the old talc mill? Is it, things like that?
but it's people,
But that doesn't distinguish us from any other town that has people.
and this is art. It's just plain art.
Oh, I thought their push was, this is about what we are and what makes Johnson,
That's-
Johnson. That's what I thought.
That's
Just
what we
like
said in the
now.
select board meeting.
Anything like that.
Oh, okay.
It said it was
That's what I thought it was.
town
He
and
doesn't
village
have
of
a
Johnson.
He doesn't have a pitchfork because it's a satellite.
The other one had a pitchfork. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
So anyway, my point is, nobody's here to tell us what the meaning of this picture is. Who come up with the meaning and the design, and what are they trying to do by putting this picture on them?
What they're trying to say is that everybody's welcome.
That's
But that's a
your
fair.
assumption.
Yeah, it
So
is.
I'd like to hear from whoever drew this and decided to do it before I make any decision.
And every town is, everybody's welcome. That doesn't distinguish us from any
If you're
other
gonna
town.
distinguish Johnson, it should have all Parker's and Stearns building, maybe the woolen mill, seems out, they've been here as long as Johnson has.
But not.
No, you got two of them, Larry, and they've been here as long as Johnson. We got 125 years for the woolen mills, and I think 115 for Parker and Stearns. And Johnson Village is 126 years old this year, I think, 127. But I just think that we ought to do something that doesn't get torn down in 2 years like Burlington did. So if we're gonna do something like that, it ought to represent our community, not just what looks like a bunch of cartoon characters.
I think it's their representation, it's the artist's representation of this people in our world. That's it.
That's
It's a
what it's-
piece of art.
And if somebody was here saying that's what we're putting up, that's awesome, okay? I get that, but when you're saying this represents Johnson, that represents a lot of towns.
It represents Johnson.
Doesn't
It's
say
a
Johnson
piece
on it.
of-
No, but the email we got said, this was for representing this represented Johnson. That's what threw me off.
I think it's ugly as shit, to be honest with you. So if we're gonna do something on a big ass mural on a building, it ought to look good. It ought to look like something that belongs in Johnson. That looks like it belongs on the cover of a Mad magazine. So it does. I'm not trying to be disgraceful to art. Art is in the eye of the beholder. However, when the email from Brian Story says it was to represent the village and town of Johnson, that does not.
That's what threw me off.
Yeah, well, I don't think I think that was Brian's.
Then,
Okay.
That was Brian.
I wish somebody was here to explain that. That would have been nice. Whoever was a committee was here to explain what this meant. Like, see it well.
Pass it down, so that's NDU, the Art Studio Center, represented there. Farm stand is a very active.
But-
with an apron, I mean,
But this is every town. This is every town that's not. And you're right. If that was Brian's wording and Brian said the wrong wording, then that's 100% on him. But it'd be nice if somebody was here saying, "Oh, this is for this specifically," and done.
well, I think it was done, the beautification committee.
Well, let's just put it on the agenda for next month to approve the memorandum, and then we won't even have the ability to decide. It'll be up to the town because it's their garage. We won't even have to. spend
Right,
any
exactly.
time.
I think it's the town's deal, not ours.
Yes,
And so, talking about, actually, just repeated again, was you're talking about the language and the, rights to the building to the town, and you see that's gonna be happening.
What rights?
So right now, the village and the town share responsibility and ownership of all village. The memorandum that Diane spoke of with a work session, was never adopted. Obviously, it's important to speak, so it can't be decided in this meeting, but Steve Weiss has indicated that there's something that he's got going on, because you're indicating this is an eminent, decision. Because you said they can take it next meeting it will belong to the town, so we don't have any say in it, so it sounds like to me that you have something that you've been talking about.
No,
That is, then what?
I was under the impression it was gonna be something that would be easily passed, but maybe it's not. I don't know.
I mean, you read the meeting that I was at, when we started to discuss this, and it got to a point where it was so contentious that it ended. So I don't know what would.
Was that all about the food shop?
That was part of it, so I'm not exactly sure what indication you have that this is gonna be a easy flyby, article.
I mean, none of that memorandum is gonna fly until there's lines and a map and stuff like it. Because I'm not just gonna give the village or the town permission to do whatever they want on a building when we're still responsible for the property. 50%.
Right, but I mean, putting a mural on is not, it's not gonna hurt.
It's not, but it would be nice to have somebody tell us what this mirror was for. To me, I would let, if one of the people to this group was here saying, you know what, we created this for this, and it was like Brian, what Brian was said was just Brian, then I was like, okay, I get it, but none of us know what this means. None of us. And all I know is from Brian's email, it was representing Johnson. And to me, that doesn't represent Johnson.
My honest opinion of this, I think we could have got some kindergarten kids over to the little school over here to draw this. So if we have an art studio doing stuff, why does it always have to look like a Mad magazine?
Well, you know what this looks
It's
like?
representing Johnson in the village.
Did you ever see Kate Heatman's drawing?
No, I'm not an art connoisseur. I'm just saying that if you're gonna do something,
She did the placemats and it was for Johnson's 200th anniversary or something, and they laminated them. I still have mine somewhere. Anyway,
Let's just
Very
table this,
similar.
they can maybe come up with something that's more acceptable to, it's just a design that no one has put a lot of work into putting it on a wall yet, so.
somebody's put a lot of work into that drawing. Whether they
Well-
like the drawing or not, a lot of work was.
I would vote to do this, is what I would do.
Yeah, I would too, just
Because it's gonna add some color and somebody who's an artist is doing the work.
Mr. Chair, I respectfully decline, and I think we need a definition of this before any votes taken.
I just want to know, that's it.
That-
That's it.
So it wasn't very long ago that, this board was received a request to tear that building down. You're talking about the garage storage, right?
No.
No, we're not gonna do it.
On the actual town garage?
Yeah.
Oh,
The town.
my mistake. I thought it was on the wall for the.
On the town garage.
So it's really not a whole lot different than the cow thing.
The cow's on private property.
Yeah, but it's still not a whole
The
lot.
cow's on private property.
The world cow thing is just the,
Mhm.
nothing to do with Johnson.
It's on.
But that's the thing, did they say it was to do with John? Like I said, I just wanna know what this is, that's, like, if somebody come to me and said, okay, this is to represent honestly, I thought it was racial justice. To me personally, I have no problem with it, as long as I know what it's for, but I'm just going off what I was told, and it was representing Johnson, and to me, that doesn't. It represents a lot of towns.
So I think the chair indicated.
Oh, sorry.
I think he indicated he'd like to table it, so you guys can see an argument, but if
No.
Yeah, let's move on to our executive session. What's that?
Looks like after the executive session, the only thing left is other business and then adjourn. Can we move to other business before,
What other
You have
business?
something for me?
I have something.
Yep.
Well, I also added an update on the ULP charge and expenses related to it.
Chair.
Go ahead. yeah.
All right, Ken.
Okay.
I asked for an update on the ULP charge and the expenses related to it.
Oh, I thought you were giving an update.
Nope, I don't know nothing about it. It's a
I
secret.
actually emailed it to you.
Yep. That weren't in the public.
Oh, so
I
you want to
believe it
be
was-
part of the public record, is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, we read the ULP charge in the public.
I believe it's $6,250. That includes defending the News and Citizen lawsuit as well.
And that was a public records request against Diane.
Yeah, all of the charges, the
Now the total.
total. And as far as the status goes, that's what we were gonna have, Brian Moynihan bring us up to in this executive meeting, so, because I don't really know myself.
And an estimate as to how much more we're gonna spend on that.
That's, I don't know.
Because I know when the ULP charge was read, there were several members of the audience that asked how much was gonna be spent, and I'm pretty sure it was a $5,000 bill. And we're over that. So I'd like to know how much more we're gonna spend on this ULP charge allowed by this board.
I don't know how much it's pursued.
I can't tell you that
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
until we have the executive session.
Then I'd expect a monthly update on this, Mr. Chair, until this is resolved. Because that's $6,250 out of taxpayer funds. And-
1,350, I think it was, is for the News and Citizen defense.
Yeah, and you just said the total was $6,250.
Right.
That's the News and Citizen Defense and the,
Yeah.
The 62.
yeah.
So
Okay,
I'd love to,
Go ahead, Brian. Hello?
So it's right around $5,000 now, or 49.
Well, go ahead and bring up your point.
So that was my question was, is the coding for the lawyer's fees, are they separated by event? Or is it just lawyer's fees for the year under one code?
By event,
By event,
by project.
by project, so Diane's,
It's the village, by the way.
actually, the charge was to you.
I know, but if you look at the.
Didn't have my name on it.
if
Diane
you-
At the
Lehouiller.
village,
you
trustees.
She's talking.
If
I have it
you
right here.
Look at the cover of the ULP, it says, Wiggle versus Village of Johnson
correct,
is what it says.
if he doesn't finish it with Diane's transgression, not your lawsuit, it is against the village, the village paying for it. So my question was gonna be, I knew about the 6,200 or whatever it was at that time, but having a separation. We're looking at just shy of $5,000 for that event, and then somewhere around $1,200-1,300 for the nuisance request. Yeah, has the nuisance request been resolved?
No.
No. Okay, so that's still under litigation then. Okay, and then obviously your request for your public apology has not been fulfilled yet either.
We can't talk about that.
Okay, like, I'm not asking for any legal stuff, I'm asking if that has a apology been given.
We can't talk about that.
No.
It's part of the
resolution.
whole lawsuit.
Okay. Okay, you got some other questions?
And everyone will get an update right now.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. I can respect the parties and stuff, so. And you asked, my other question, you already answered during the meeting, so. Thank you very much, appreciate the job you guys are doing, and, let the matter.
Thank you, Will.
Thanks, Will.
So we need a motion to go into executive session.
This is for you.
For executive session, I'd just like to say how ridiculous it is that you guys were all okay with putting stuff in the public when it was an employee, but you're not when it's Diane Lehouiller. Just have that on record.
Have we done Johnson Fire yet?
No, I'm just gonna.
Okay, that's coming after, okay.
Be here for executive session.
Is Brian up and on now? Okay.
I believe this is it. The two. Do this one first, I believe, and then. Confidential attorney client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body.
Okay, but and then this whole thing?
I think this one comes first.
I should have my glasses.
Do you want to do it, Linda?
Sure.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I'll try. Want it to make sense.
So, it just says, we want to go into executive session for 1 year, say, 313A-1. Oh, no, that's the same one. I don't know if we need the second one for this one or not.
Not employee evaluation of the office employee.
No, it's this one. It's confidential attorney client
Also, it's this
communication.
one.
It's this one here, and that's the sub.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go into executive session for BSA 313A1. Confidential attorney-client communications made for the purpose of providing professional legal services to the body.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we'll have to do a roll call vote.
No, we don't have to, but everybody's here.
What?
Ken said,
Everybody's here. You don't have to roll call.
Oh,
even though Ken said no.
Yeah, that's only when some people are participating online.
Oh.
That's,
All right, so the vote is 4-1 to go into executive session.
Is Marla's iPad still on?
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, gotcha, sorry.
All right, so we need to ask all the people other than Brian to leave.
Do you want me to go home or just go in the room?
We still have a little bit more business maybe to do after dawn, so if you go in the other room, please. So, did you get them off, Rosemary? We need to get them.
Okay, good.
Did she go that way or that way?
I think.
You know where she went?
Trust me, you don't want nothing to do with the email.
What?
You don't want nothing to do with the email. All over.
Yeah, really? I need a home and
Say
eat.
that, but I'll get home and it'll be midnight before I can fall asleep.
Yep. I would go home and take a dog fence down and eat supper.
Yeah.
Put a dog fence up back.
Yeah, they're excavating our back lawn, so I gotta tear
Are
it
you
down.
losing, property in the back from the water?
No, we rip wrapped it. Yeah, we're losing about 8 feet a year.
I know when Sarah lived there, she talked to Matt about
Doing something.
contacting the state and the state would.
One that got, it's all out of pocket. Yeah, we paid like 22 or
It
something like
changed a
that.
lot, that whole landscape back there since that whole.
Like initially, you know, that peak that sticks out, if you look at the old map, we own half of it. And it's eroded back so much that we basically own a piece of the tip.
It's amazing.
We finished up, I can go eat.
All right, we're out of executive session. We still have a couple items left on the agenda. The fire department and electric department general report. I think that's it, unless.
I'd like to ask permission to write a grant for the powerhouse. It's a yes
It's
or a no.
not on the agenda.
It's, I put it under other business.
I didn't hear it.
I asked at the beginning of the meeting.
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear Mr. Chair say it.
I heard it. So, let's do these other two items first. I can just give them to you and have them put on the record, right, Donna? The electric, the report and the fire department report.
Excuse me.
I've got copies of them here.
Oh.
You do? Okay, good.
There's nothing, usual in them that we have to make.
And I would think Troy would highlight it if there was anything we need to.
All right, and the only thing left,
I got one.
okay. Go ahead, Roseanne.
I made an error on Pete's on-call cash. I just want to get approval to.
You know, I say to the girls and you say something, that's it, you're fine.
Well,
They get fired once a day whether they want to.
so like we were talking,
On-call.
you looked into it, is he 16 a month or is he able to get 8 hours each week for the whole month? Cause you were thinking that maybe he was restricted union wise to 16 a week.
It says 8. You're on call.
So do we
So it's
just
8 a week,
initial this?
even if it's 4 weeks?
It's 8. He's the only first class line.
Right.
He's technically on call every week.
Right, so it's 8 hours a week for 4 weeks, where we were just doing 16, so we're around 16 hours for every month up to this point.
Depends on
Well,
how
we
many
get
there are in a month.
different rates per week.
Okay,
Because their on-call week is not the same as our pay week. So one week they get 343, next week they get 457. So I took the differences. What he didn't get paid. This is the total due.
okay, so to make up for every week, okay, perfect,
Wait a minute.
perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
That's consensus of the board?
Yeah, please,
Please. And Friday is that Thursday, so hopefully the two of them can start off.
start splitting it,
Yeah.
good.
All right, Diane, do you want to just request?
Yeah, so, Melanie Riddle, who is LCPC, is going to look into, the EC and the EPA. And she gave us the go-ahead to write a grant to spruce up that area near the covered bridge. And I want your permission to write that grant. It's a Spark grant and it's due next Monday.
But nothing on the backside that we pay, it's just all covered?
It's all covered.
Okay.
It's not that cost. Village, anything.
You have my permission. Motion.
I move we give permission to apply for the Spark grant.
Excuse me.
Can the chair second the motion? You know, Rosemary? Can the chair second a motion?
Yeah.
I second. Discussion. Well, discussion.
What do you think, BJ?
Aye. Oh, wait,
Okay.
am I,
Okay, that works.
sorry,
All in favor?
I was droning.
All in favor of letting Diane do this?
Oh,
Aye. All opposed?
excuse me.
Passes 4-0. 4-1 abstention. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.